Okay, so today we're going to talk about a couple of new modeling tools. This is kind of bouncing off of that Intro to Maya tutorial, which was posted before in this playlist. So hopefully you saw that. You have a basic understanding of the menus, of the layout, of the interface, and now we can start actually manipulating some polygons and start talking about some different modeling techniques. It'll be on a very basic level in this tutorial, and then it'll kind of progress throughout the rest of the playlist as these are continue to be developed. So I want to create a polygon first. So there's the three options as far as actually creating your polygon. So the first one is to go up to your Create button up in your menu, down to Polygon Primitives, and just click Cube. We're going to use a cube today, so that's what I want to be focusing on. Your next option would be in this little toolbar here to make sure you have Polygon selected, to click Polygon Cube, and then it would just pop a cube in the middle of your grid. And the third option would be to hold down spacebar. That'll load this menu up. Go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and Cube. So any of those three things will work, and it should now populate your screen with a cube. From here, I want to add some new subdivisions in, so I'm going to zoom into that cube, and if you want to just click F, that'll focus you right in on your cube and kind of zoom for you. And then over on the right in my channel box, which is what we're seeing over here, where it says pcube1 with all of my kind of statistics, underneath that, under inputs, it says polycube1. If you just select that, it'll load a new drop down, and it's got some new options for you, which can help you kind of change the look of whatever this polygon was that you just created. So I'm going to select subdivisions width and just drag down over height and depth, and I'm just going to type a 4 in and click enter. What you'll notice is that now just subdivided our cube with 4 subdivisions for the width, the height, and the depth, so that we have some other areas we can kind of work with, so that we can start to pull faces out and push things around and actually start to develop a shape from here. So I deselected my cube. If I wanted to see that wireframe, even when I'm not selected on my cube, which I'm going to keep on, it's on this little menu right above your camera. And it's this button right here. It's that blue cube with kind of the highlight around it. You just select that. It's your wireframe unshaded button, and it will load up your wireframe. Okay, so I'm going to pretend that I'm doing some type of animal, just like a giraffe with a long neck, and we'll model out a couple of legs that kind of drop out from the bottom as well. So I'm going to select face mode. So if you right click on your cube and go down to face, I want to select a few faces here. I'm going to select these 4 right in the middle and start to extrude these out and kind of pull them up as if they were a neck on this cube. So I've selected them. If you want to make sure that that's the only thing that you have selected, right in that menu where we had the wireframe unshaded, if you go down a little bit further, you'll see this little button is called the Isolate Select button. It's got the little blue dots, and they kind of make a square with the cursor in the bottom right. If you select it, what you'll notice is that everything else that you have deselected is going to disappear. And then if you click it again, it'll all come back. It's a nice tool to just kind of have in your back pocket and use just to make sure you didn't select a face that you didn't actually want to extrude from. It's easy to select other faces, so if I would have accidentally selected a face in the back and I click the Isolate Select button, I would then see it. I could just zoom into it, hold down Shift and select it, and that would deselect. And then when I come back, it's now deselected, and I can start to extrude that out. So with those faces selected, we want to extrude. We want to pull these up and start to shape a neck. So I'm going to hold down Shift and right click on any of those faces, and then right underneath it you'll see where it says Extrude Face. I'm just going to select that, and you'll see this new little manipulator that pops up. On this tool you've got your move options, which we're used to seeing, right? That's those arrows with the lines coming out of it. You've got your scale tool, which is right on the edge. It's the boxes. So there's a blue, a green, in a red, and then you've also got your rotate tools kind of built in here as well. If you click that blue ring, kind of that outer ring, it'll load up your rotate options for you too. So you've got all of those tools kind of in one. And then on top of that, you can also either work in a local space or kind of like your world space. So how it's going to set it up is in this local space. So you'll see if I pull this up, it's going to bring all 4 of those faces up and select or extrude out from our original cube. If I just click Z and undo that, and I click this little blue circle with the line coming out of it, which is in the top right of where your extrude tool would be, you'll notice that now it just changed the look of my manipulator a little bit, and it actually put it just kind of in a different spot. So it's going to manipulate these faces in a different way. You'll get the hang of that. You'll get used to which one you need to be using at certain times. It shouldn't really make that much of a difference for what we're going to be doing today. I will show you the one difference when we start to scale a little bit later. But other than that, you just want to be consistent with it. But you can kind of work between the two. You're not stuck on one option. So feel free to kind of use those to your advantage. So I pulled up a little bit with my cube just by selecting that top handle and just dragging it straight up. If I wanted to scale it down, I could just click any of those out the boxes kind of on the outside. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this middle box, which then appears, and that'll scale all of those at the same to keep my ratios the same. So I'm going to scale that down. I'll then kind of just bump it forward a little bit. And I'm also going to rotate it. So if I select that blue outer ring, I want to rotate it just a little bit like this, just so I can kind of have this neck come out a little bit here, almost like a hook that's going to come off. So that looks good. And then I want to extrude that out again. So you have a couple of ways that you can do that. You can hold down Shift and right click like we did the first time and go down to Extrude Face. Or if Extrude was the last tool that you used, which in this case it was for us, you can select G. And G will be your hotkey for just kind of redoing that last tool. So it's not always going to be extrude. It depends on what else you were doing. But in this instance for us, it'll be extrude. So then I'm going to select this little box and I'm going to just pull this guy back up and start to develop the neck a little bit more. So I'm going to have it start to turn forward and kind of dip back down. So I pulled it up. I'm going to rotate it just like before by selecting that blue outer ring, rotating it down, and then I want to scale it as well. So if I select any of those boxes, I can then go into the middle and scale all of those the same. And we'll just extrude it out like 2 more times to kind of get a little bit of a shape in there, and then we'll go work on the feet and talk about some other tools. But I want you to get used to extrude because it's important and it's really going to help you. So then I can click G again, and I can just pull out this next division of faces. I'm going to drop it down a little bit. I want to scale it, and then I want to rotate it. And I just wanted to continue this kind of pattern that we've had from before of dipping it here. So that looks good. And I'll just do one more to kind of complete that arc. So I can click G. You can pull it forward, drop it down a little bit more. I can rotate it by selecting that blue outer ring and getting my rotate tool up. I'll get this thing rotated. And I'll scale it just a tiny bit more so that we're continuing to use that. So that looks good. From there, you can just get off of it. You want to get out of the extrude tool. So if you just right click on your object and go to object mode, it'll get you right out of that extrude tool. You do want to be careful with your extrude tool because if you're using it and you don't realize that you're using it, you're going to be adding new faces and new vertices and spots that you don't want them. And that can cause you issues down the road. So be careful when you're using extrude that you're only extruding areas that you're actually wanting to work with. So that's the basic understanding of the extrude tool. I want to use it a little bit more as we kind of come down the body here as well. So let's create what would be legs. So if I go to the bottom of my object here, I right click, I go to my face mode, and I'm going to select the front and the back. Only on one side of my object, because I'm going to end up mirroring this later. So we're only going to model one side at a time. So if these were to act as legs, I can select them, and I want to extrude them down. So I'm going to hold down Shift and right click and go to Extrude Face. And we can start to pull those out as if they're acting as legs. So here's where you can kind of see the difference between where you can place your manipulator if you want to work in that local space or not. So as an example, if you just kind of watch what's going to happen with these faces. If I were to try and scale these down, right, I wanted to scale them either up or down, and I wanted the four sides to stay consistent on each leg. If I go to my scale tool and I do that here, it works well, right? It all looks correct, looks like it's working. If I undo that and I select the little box here, and then I try and scale, you'll notice that it actually goes the opposite way, right? It's scaling out compared to from where our tool is. It's scaling away from it. And that's not what I want. So I want to make sure that I'm still working in that local space for this instance. So I'm going to click this button again. It'll pop me back down. And I can scale these out just a little bit as they kind of come off of the leg. So that looks good. And then I can click G. I'll go down a little bit more, and we'll build in like a little bit of this really rough looking kneecap. So I'm going to go a little bit bigger here. I'll click G, come down again. That looks good. I'll click G, come down again. And now I want to start to scale this back in. I'll go a little bit further. This would kind of be where the calf would then start. We'll click G, but we'll just go pretty much straight down to where the actual feet would end up being, or the hooves. I'm going to scale this down. I'm going to let that be a little bit thinner down towards the bottom here. I'll click G, and now I just want to add a couple of different subdivisions in, or edge loops in, so that I can use those later to show you guys some other tools. So I'm going to build a little foot, and we're going to add a couple layers into it. So I click G, I pulled down, I'm going to scale it out a little bit here. Click G, pull it down, go out a little bit more, and then click G one more time, extrude that down, and you can just leave it like that. So at this point, you want to get out of your extrude tool. You can either right click and go into object mode, or you can click Q. Q will kind of just be your select tool, so that'll help you get out of any of those other tools that you're using. So this looks good. I'm going to turn my grid off. And what you can see here is that we've got this little weird looking draft guy. And we've got some spaces that we can kind of change around now. So we've already talked about extruding. We extruded the neck out and we extruded these legs out. So let's talk about a couple of other quick tools today and things that may be helpful for you. So let's say I had pulled these down. I had created these legs. So I'm going to zoom in on my two legs right here. Or my feet, sorry. I've created my feet, and I realized I want my front foot to actually look a little bit different. I don't want this layer of faces to be there. I want this to just be one large face. There's a couple of ways you could go about doing that. So I'll just talk about one of those right now, which I think will come in handy later on for you guys. And that is the target weld tool. So it's a way to merge your vertices together. So I would want to right click and go into vertex mode. And then in vertex mode, you'll notice that all of those little vertices pop up. They're those little purple dots kind of in all of your corners or your edges. And I want to merge some of those together. So I want to pull this one here up and merge it with what's above it. And then I want to do that around the entire foot to get rid of this entire layer of faces. So if I hold down Shift and I right click and I just go up, you'll see that it says merge vertices. when you go up to merge vertices, you'll get 3 new tools. I'm going to use the target weld tool. It'll be on the bottom, and I'm using Maya 2017. So I'm going to select target weld, and you'll notice I've got this new little cursor. If I select one of my vertices, it wraps this orange looking circle around it. I can pull that to any other vertice that's in my scene, and I can let go and it'll merge those two together. Keep in mind that the one that you end up going to is where your vertices are going to merge into. So I'm going to go straight up. If I go up there and I just let go, you'll see the other vertice pulls straight up into it. And then I want to do that all the way around the foot. So you can just rotate your way around the foot and merge those vertices straight up. And then what you have is that layer of edges or faces gone, right? So we've turned it back into one face, and those faces will be clean too. There won't be double vertices or double faces or anything like that you would need to worry about. It will work perfectly for you. So that's one way that you could go about doing it. And like I said, there's a ton of other ways you could potentially get rid of that layer. You could delete the edge and some other options, but the target weld tool can come in to a lot of handy for you. Being able to merge vertices together, stitch things is super helpful, so I wanted to kind of show you that one first. So let's talk about another tool, which is the bridge tool. So I'm going to go to my back foot now here. And on my back foot, let's say that at some point throughout my model, I'd grabbed some faces and I deleted them. And for whatever reason, I had deleted this face down here on my foot. But I was working in another spot. I didn't realize that it had happened. So I came down to my foot and I realized that I've got this giant, this empty space. I'm missing a face that's right there. And I need to get that back. So how can you get it back? One option is to use the bridge tool. So if you right click on your model and go into your edge mode, what you want to do is select two edges that are kind of facing each other, right? So kind of on opposite sides. So if I select this edge up on top, hold down Shift, and select the edge that's on bottom, I'm telling Maya to bridge that gap. It's going to create a face that goes from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to hold Shift, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go down to bridge. I can just let go, and you'll notice that it fills that gap back in. The bridge tool also has some other options if you were interested in playing around with them. You could add multiple subdivisions into there, and you could do some other things. You do want to be careful with that. If I were to go in and add subdivisions, it may look great on this side, but in reality, over on this other face, we've now created a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-sided polygon, which we would really want to avoid, right? We don't want that to happen. We only want 4-sided polygons for what we're going to be working with. So you can just go with no subdivisions in this instance, and you can just click Q and get out of that tool. And now we've rebuilt that hole that had popped up into our foot on accident. So that's two tools and two different things that you can use. Another tool which will help you guys out is the multi-cut tool. So if I were to be in my object mode, which is this mode right here, everything should just look green, and I hold down Shift and I right click, over on the left you can see that there's this multi-cut tool. If I select that, what I could do is go in and I could draw in new edges, and that could come in handy, right? So if I would have used that bridge tool and I would have added in one subdivision, I would have had an edge that went from here to here, and all you need to do is just click in two different spots and click enter, and it'll then add that new edge in. But what I just did is, even though this side looks okay, I've now created a 5-sided polygon on the other side, on this other face. And I would want to go all the way around, right? I would want to continue this, and I would want to multi-cut all the way around that face and create an entire edge loop so that I wasn't leaving those 5-sided polygons. So the multi-cut tool will snap to certain vertices that you already have. So if I go over this vertice right here and I click it, you'll see that it's selected, it turns yellow. I could go to the other side of that edge and click again, and now it's going to create that new edge. It's going to be green, but there's no reason for me to stop. I could continue to go, so I could go through the next one and click, and then I could go up to the next one and kind of click to finish off that edge loop. Ooh, there we go, and click enter, and then you'll notice that it's built that edge loop that now goes all the way around our foot. And that's perfect. That's what you would want, right? You don't want it to have 5-sided polygons, so if you're going to add those things in, you want to build that edge loop in. And the multi-cut tool is nice because you have a lot of flexibility with it. You can put the edges and the vertices wherever you want, but because of that, you need to be careful with it because it can get you into a lot of trouble. If you need to build in new edge loops, so let's say I've done this to my back leg, and in the front I had taken that out, right? So I took that edge loop out earlier because I used target weld and I merged vertices together. But let's say I want to get that back, and I want to put those edge loops back in now. Rather than me just using the multi-cut tool and going all the way around twice, another way to just build an edge loop in is in object mode. You've got your object selected, hold down shift and right click, and then right underneath that multi-cut tool is your insert edge loop tool. So if you select that, now wherever you click on your model, as long as you're on an edge, you'll see this green dotted line, and you'll notice that that is an actual edge loop. So that's going to build that edge loop like we just did with the multi-cut tool, except it's going to do all of it at once. So you're not going to have to go through and add in each vertice. If you click and you hold, you can drag all the way up and down that edge that you originally selected, and it'll create the edge loop that flows around your model. If you let go, it's going to make that edge loop. Just like that. So if I wanted to add 2 in, like the other side had, I could then just click again and let go. And now I've just built in 2 new edge loops over on that front foot. I could click Q and get out of that tool, go into my object mode, and what you'll notice here is that we've got this little draft guy that we built. We've got these legs coming down, and they look pretty similar. I didn't line them up exact, but by using a couple of different tools, we were able to manipulate those feet. We were able to bridge gaps, target weld some vertices together, and do some other little tricks, which should really help you guys out. So those were the basic tools I wanted to go over today. I know that that was fairly quick and fairly simple, but just those few tools, the extrude tool, the bridge tool, the target weld tool, the multi-cut tool, and the insert edge loop tool will really help you out. You'll be amazed at how often you can use some of those. And you want to find your own process out on how you prefer to model, because those are great options to use, but there's also plenty of others that we'll talk about throughout the rest of this kind of playlist and this little series. So pick around with them, keep them in the back of your mind, and you never know when you're going to use them. So I'll have a new one posted soon, and we'll kind of continue to go through Maya throughout the next couple of months and just really talk about an introduction to it, how to build some basic models. And we'll kind of work our way up to some character modeling towards the end. All right, thank you.